This episode of the Unredacted podcast is brought to you by Dragon Forge Consulting. Dragon Forge provides boutique consulting services for federal and commercial clients looking to expand their business in a turbulent time. Learn more by visiting their website at www.dragon-forge.net. That's www.dragon-forge.net. Lindy, good to see you.
Brian, nice to see you.
So I understand you just took a trip.
I did. I was
Where
at
were
the
you?
Cypher Brief Threat Conference in the lovely Sea Island, Georgia.
Ooh, Sea Island. Very nice.
I know, pretty bougie. I felt very inspired by the former G7 leaders who have visited there, so it made the geopolitical conversations that much richer, quote unquote. Yes, it's good.
And General Petraeus was there this year?
General Petraeus was there, yeah. He's like a Cypher Brief legend. Obviously, like the war in Ukraine is a key focus. I think Cypher Brief has had advisors and experts and a lot of folks out there, but I mean, for me, the interesting take was this year just how many problems we have from a geopolitical landscape. War in Ukraine, you know, almost feels like old hat, even though still pretty significant. China, Caribbean, are we calling it a conflict or a war? Very, you know, that whole thing. I'm even forgetting some of the major headlines. Hamas, peace with Israel. I mean, like, I just, like, you lose track of all the things going on. And then a key takeaway of the conference is a problem that in America, unfortunately, many of us lack the desire or, I don't know, awareness or understanding of how exactly to look at all of, you know, these competing problems, you know, from an international landscape.
Because our attention is divided?
Yeah, because we're too bad. I called it NatSec navel gazing, even though it's like not NatSec, right? But even within the national security community, it's too easy for us to focus inward, almost criticizing ourselves, which is good. But we also need to look at what's going outside in the broader world, I think, and understand that. And why do we do what we do to protect America? It's because we have all of these things going on outside in the the big bad world out there.
We are encountering the post World War II reawakening, right? We've come out of the war on terror. Now we're back into steady state competition, and the world's very different. How do we navigate it? And we learned in the lead up to World War II that if we projected abroad, we're safer, right? And Soviet experience the same way. Maybe that wasn't fully true in 9/11. Maybe we didn't do the right investments, but being projected abroad gave us more security. And so when we retract, we do make ourselves more vulnerable. So maybe that needs to happen. Maybe budget austerity is important right now, and that's something we need to do. But it's worth examining. Like, where do we retract then?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I do feel like the timing of the Cypher Brief conference couldn't have been better in terms of what we're trying to do here, right, Brian? Because, I mean, a key topic there was like, there's a lot going on in national security. Why, for the love of Pete, do people not understand it or know about it? And why is there not kind of a common conversation around it? I mean, we're very distracted by, you know, you look at the headlines right now, we're talking about the White House ballroom more than we're talking about the government shutdown. I think that might be a problem, right? And so then it also ties into what we talk about in national security. We wanted to take this in a different way and keep the conversation going and invite some folks that we hadn't encountered frequently. And I thought this would be a great way to do that. What are your kind of thoughts around what you're trying to achieve here? Yeah, well, I'm an avid podcaster, obviously, so I've done a few of these. I really enjoy the format and the conversations, and I do feel like what we were able to do together was special. And I don't say that, like, too many people think they're special today. I'm going to be the first one to say it. So I don't say that, lightly. I think we had some really amazing people come alongside it and as guests, and I think kind of the conversations that we had were just informative and useful and relevant in our community. So yeah, when you were like, would you like to keep it going and open the scope a little bit beyond just careers, I was like, yeah, sign me up, because I do think stories matter. Clearly, I built my whole, career around that idea. Content matters. And if you can provide useful, relevant content right now, in an era when there is a lot of content, it's not that there's a lack of content or resources, but bringing something really unique and informative to the table, and also that people want to listen to, because gosh darn it, I get bored really easily. So I think all of those things made me like, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I think so too. The other part I felt strongly about, and I was so glad we had a kindred kind of guidepost in that regard, is that you can listen to the news, and the news has perspective, and we all know that, right? Everybody has biases, and I've gone my whole career being nonpartisan. I don't think that's a proper place in as a civil servant, and so I never had that kind of view in government, and I've kind of carried that into my personal life as well. So I think that national security is a common good. It's a nonpartisan good. It's something that you need to be vigilant about and defend. And I think part of the reason why, and you put it so well in the beginning here, that our dialogue around key topics is drifting in such an odd place. And so if there's something we can do to tack it back toward, let's get down to serious topics and talk to serious people, and let's discuss serious solutions and get that dialogue moving. That's what gets me excited. Your thoughts? I mean, you said serious 3 times, which makes me think that you may have chosen the wrong co-host, because I was told we could also have fun, Brian. We are allowed to have fun. Okay, because that's key too, right? I mean, are we going to have to be cerebral? Because I do feel like there's a lot of, I enjoy a nice NPR show myself, but sometimes you want perspective, right? I think what makes our dialogues special, I'm going to say it again, I'm riding the short bus over to the podcast today, is that we do have unique, but I think also not hypercharged perspectives, I hope, where there is just, again, there's a lot of angst to the conversation, right? A lot of folks who maybe drift into the space for an election cycle, and we're old people. We're old but cool people, Brian. I'm in a subtitle, the Old But Cool National Security Podcast. And I think that's like a missing element, right? You get the seniors. Okay, can I have a sidebar hot take? Go. So I do think there's this thing in national security that your opinions only matter if you're a retired 4-star general or someone who has come out of the senior executive service. Now, you're a little more famous than me in terms of your government career, right? Your government bona fides. I like to call them bona fides. Everybody says it's actually bona fides, but I think it makes you sound like a pretentious prick when you say that. I'm just gonna say it. But your government, I have very unimpressive government credentials. Let me just say that. But I think I have some respect in the government. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm verbally processing this as we go. I think the benefit of this podcast a little bit is that it's two people who have expertise, but are not quite yet dead. True? No.
True. That's true. That is true. I do take my pulse every morning just to be sure that I'm not dead.
You can never be too safe now.
You gotta be sure. You gotta be sure. I wasn't sure this morning, so I had to check. Yes, I think one of the, and I think this really came, again, back to the podcast experience we had before, is that there's a lot of, what do you call it, latent knowledge. Like people that are really smart, doing different things, have a lot to share, and especially around career growth and things like that. And I think we got a lot of that. We benefited from, I'll say spoiled. We were spoiled by that expertise from those folks. And I think for the most part, we had a couple of folks from the senior executive service, but most of the folks were 15s and lower, right, in their time in government, or had never been in government at all. It doesn't mean that their knowledge isn't valuable, but I don't think they have a platform to share it. And so, yeah, let's open up that space. Let's have that platform to share it. I would love to hear the perspective of folks who are just starting the security clearance process or have just joined the national security community for the first time, and they're navigating questions like, what is this? I don't understand what we're doing. Like my first time in government, I worked for the Defense Information Systems Agency, and I had a colleague who, looking back on it, not the most motivated person. And so at about 11 o'clock to about 1 or 2, just depending on the day, they took a nap. They went into this office and they laid down on the couch and they took a nap. And I was 22. And so I was going around, I'm like, is this normal? Is this a thing? I was like, for her it is. Yes, every day that's what she does. And that was kind of my introduction to the federal service. Now, this is one person, and I've never encountered anyone else like that before. But those are real stories. Those are real things. And if you're a young person trying to figure out, like, I made this big jump, I thought it was something else, and I don't know what it is, let's talk about that. What do you want your career to be? Where do you want it to go? What are you observing? And I think, too, and this will hit you where you live, because you're dealing with folks who are getting clearances for the first time, and they're encountering these weird things like, I can't take my cell phone in? What? What do you mean? I have to take my Fitbit and leave it in a locker? That doesn't make sense. Why am I doing that? What about my smartwatch? Like, yeah, it's all got to stay in there. Why? Why is that a thing? And is there a way to do business differently where we can enable that sort of thing? Well, maybe, but we haven't talked about it. So let's create a space to talk about it.
Yeah. Let's have those people on the podcast, Brian. If you have a technology that will allow me to take my smartwatch into a skiff, I would like to hear from you. I think that's a great, or sponsor it. I mean, I'm a hustler, right? So either one is fine, but
yeah, I like it.
But I think there's, to your point, you need like a shot of reality, right? I think sometimes too much, there's, again, we want this middle ground, right? Middle ground of expertise. Like you don't always have to have everything figured out before you're an expert in the space. National security, neither a fairy tale nor a villain, right? Is kind of how like I like to position it, where unfortunately a lot of people in our realm can be like, well, you have to, you've drank the Kool-Aid, you took the blood oath. If you ever say anything critical about government or national security, then you're out. Versus other people, I mean, I think to my point at the beginning, who are too hypercritical, just constantly want to talk about all the things that we can do better in this community without also being willing to celebrate the patriotism and amazing work that gets done. I like the middle ground, and you just always seem like one of those middle ground people that's, willing to recognize the things that we could do better, but also support this common good and framework that we're trying to endeavor toward.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think we can do that collectively, but we also are trying to find folks that are in the same kind of vein. And I also want to open the space up to folks who have some contrary ideas. I want to hear some of those voices. I think we don't get enough of that. And we talked about this a while ago, but I'll bring it here in the conversation. A couple of weeks ago, the Defense Secretary or Secretary of War had a presentation to all of the general officers, and the very quiet thing that happened, the media kind of focused on the event, but the very quiet thing that happened was there were a bunch of memos that got released. And one of them got me very excited because it was going to reduce the training burden for a whole bunch of these things you had to do every single stinking year, even though it was the same every single time. And some of them were so heavy, I'll say, like they were these videos and games that you had to go through and click yes, no quizzes, and an hour to 2 hours, you're just going through this thing. It's like, it doesn't change. Or if it hasn't changed, it's so woefully out of date, it's not effective. So I don't have a problem with the department taking a knee and taking a look at it and saying, maybe we should change the way we're training our folks. We should change the way we're delivering this. Does it have to be every year? Does it change all that much? You onboard, you have to take it. Great. Can we give them a year of grace so they don't have to do it every single year? I love that. Yeah, I mean,
I think that is the arc of what we want to talk about here, right? I think there's too many people who tune that out and say, Pete Hegseth, we don't like our Department of War. I want to think critically about whether even if you don't want to call it the Department of War, that was a topic that recently came up. Like, we do seem to have a lot of wars running. Potentially, like Caribbean, Ukraine, multiple people I've talked to recently, like we're in World War III with China, economic war. This is not a new phenomenon. Like I used to talk to some, colleagues in Germany, and they were always very critical of how many wars we had in the United States, because they were like, we had a big one here. Was not our shining moment. So we're not going to declare war on drugs. As much as we might hate them, we're not doing wars on drugs in Germany because we have a bad track record for picking wars. And I was
they lost two big ones.
Yeah, well, and that was like this was like 15 years ago I had this conversation. And so now it is funny, right? We're doing this, potential pivot in what we're calling. But it's like, hey, it's worth having the conversation because this is not new in America. And, as a content creator, words matter. And so where do we need to, where is our posturing on this? Is this shift just signaling what is already a reality in terms of how we talk about things and do things? Or is the name change, it does, or is it just all fake news because Congress hasn't certified it? But I think that I think again, to the point of what I hope this podcast can be is like, for the record, you are going to get a malleable perspective from me, right? The number one thing I hope is if you hear me say something here that you believe is flat out wrong, if you can civilly tell me, I welcome that, for the record. Like I want my position to be changeable. That was another thing that recently came up. Somebody said they are very anxious because of how many people they know are coming up to them and saying they don't know how to understand national security topics. And I was like, oh, whoa, that's actually the most optimistic response I've heard in a while. The thing that scares me the most is I have a lot of friends who are 100% convinced that they know what's happening on a lot of national security topics. And sometimes the more convinced you are on a posture, the more nervous it makes me. We should have room for, I hope, some conversation.
Yeah, some debate. Let's have some debate about it. Yeah, I think, and if we treat it a little more even-handedly, I think we learn more that way. I also think I will extend the same pledge. Like if I say something here and someone's like, Drake, you're totally off the mark and here's why, that's fine with me. And I would also like it to be civil, but if it's not civil, I'll take that too. That's fine. Because I think the dialogue is important. I think the debate is important. Even if it is on something that is honestly, I believe the Department of War debate is kind of trivial. But if you have strong feelings about it, let's discuss it. Let's figure it out. And if you think it's important enough to discuss publicly, let's do it. I'm excited about it. Well, what are we going to do here? Like, we've talked about some of the perspectives we're going to share, but we're also going to bring in some good folks, and the types of guests I think we already kind of talked about who we're going to be reaching into to bring on to the podcast. But I did want to take a moment and share something that I've been working on the past couple of months. My career in the intelligence community goes back quite a ways, but my first job that I got really excited about was working at the Director of National Intelligence in an office called the Office of Analytic Transformation. And it was a bright spot for many reasons, and I'll do the preamble when we finally release everything. But we're interviewing in excess of 20 people who used to work in and around that office, and what was going on in this post 9/11 timeframe where change in the IC was very rapid, big issues that had to get resolved in terms of data sharing, security, service to customers, and it was seismic. And a lot of those changes endure today. And I think the question I'm trying to answer in that series is why? Why do those endure? So kind of as a sidecar to what we're doing, we're going to have this little series released probably in the January, February timeframe. But in between now and then, we're going to have some good folks coming on board. And we'll talk about a variety of different things. So, Lindy, what are some topics that you would want to cover? We've talked about a couple of things, but we talked about careers is one thing. I imagine you want to talk about security clearances for a little bit.
Oh, I mean, who doesn't want to talk about security clearances, Brian? Everybody's favorite topic. Yeah, I mean, I think I love this intersection of like history, policy, and people. Right? I mean, I feel like sometimes, like, every once in a while we can talk about, a blast from the past, right? Or an anecdote from some of us more illustrious than others, yours career being, but, the anecdotes from our careers in public service and in government, and also hearing from other people about, what they've done, bringing in those interesting perspectives and having a conversation about them, along with a hit of current events. But I'm excited for that, that series that you're working on, because I do think, to your point, I don't know if it was this conversation or another one, like we won't have these people around forever, right? So we have a limited amount of time to gather those stories up, and being able to share that, I think, is super important.
Yeah, and I think, the stuff that we typically hear from our colleagues is kind of like a retrospective on their career. But I don't know if we've collected a lot of lessons about what they learned. So I want to collect that sort of thing. And I'm starting to get to that stuff. And I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it is getting, to me, every single interview is becoming more and more fascinating, because it starts to create this mosaic of what does success look like? How do you generate success? What elements have to be there? And is the template cross-applicable? Absolutely. I'm starting to conclude absolutely. So, yeah. I'm excited too.
Awesome.
And again, the offer from the two of us is sincere. If you've got some feedback, there's some things that you want to hear, let us know. We're going to put the email in the show notes, and you can email us at any time. And please be sure to subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, and leave us comments, and be sure to rate and review. And with that, I've been Brian Drake.
And I'm Lindy Kaiser.
And this has been the Unredacted Podcast.